Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce Joe Smith. Joe Smith is a certified management consultant, and she's an executive coach. She has served as the managing consultant of the LA office of a global human resources consulting firm before starting her own consulting practice. Joe helps firms develop their leadership talent and helps individuals achieve professional success and personal happiness. Joe is a member of the Institute of Management Consultants and has served on its national board. Joe is a past president of the Portland State University Alumni Association and a past president of the Oregon chapter of the American Marketing Association. Most recently, Joe served on the board of the National University of Natural Medicine. And with that, I'd like to introduce Joe Smith. Thank you, Joe, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, John, for that introduction. Thank you, John and Jerry, for inviting me to present on emotional intelligence. And thank you all for being here. Now, I'm going to pull up a slideshow. And even though I've been doing this for more than a year, I'm still not real quick at it. There we go. Thank you all for your patience. I'm going to talk a little bit about what emotional intelligence is and why it matters, but spend most of our time talking about how we can improve it. So according to EQ theory, among people with similar baseline IQs and similar educations, the reason that some are notably more successful than others is not because they have more IQ, but because they have more EQ. Now, we may have someone on the phone, so I'll actually read this rather lengthy definition of emotional intelligence from the Oxford Dictionary. It tells us emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. Perhaps put more simply, it's your ability to be aware of your own feelings and the feelings of others, and to use that awareness to manage your behavior and manage your relationships. The components of EQ are personal competence and social competence. Personal competence is further broken down into self-awareness, your awareness of your own feelings, your own emotions, and self-management, your ability to use that awareness to manage yourself and manage your behavior. And social competence is broken down into social awareness, your awareness of other people and of their emotions, their feelings, and your ability to use that awareness to manage your relationships. So is EQ static? Absolutely not. We can improve our EQ throughout our lives. But why should we? Well, because when we do, we achieve more professional success and more personal happiness. According to Travis Bradbury and Jean Greeley, who have done quite a lot of research on emotional intelligence and written the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0, people with high EQs, make an average of $29,000 a year more than people with low EQs. Now, that's certainly one measure of professional success, of more professional success. More personal happiness might be a little harder to measure But as we go, I'm going to share some stories and examples that I think will demonstrate that increased personal happiness. So how can you improve your self-awareness? That awareness of what you're feeling and how to use it. Well, at any point in time, stop and ask yourself, what am I feeling? And why am I feeling angry or sad or enlarged or happy or whatever it is you're feeling? Why are you feeling that? After this program, I'm going to send you some additional information and resources, including a short exercise to help you identify your core values. When you identify your core values, that can help you identify what you're feeling and the source of those feelings. Oh, I want to back up there. So let me share with you a couple of examples. I was working with a wealth manager who became really, really angry at one of his employees. I agreed with him that the employee had done something she shouldn't have done, but I thought his anger was way out of proportion to her transgression. Well, turned out that one of his core values is loyalty, and he thought what she had done was disloyal to him and to his firm. And he didn't think he could confront her about it without revealing the name of the person who had told him about it. And one of his other core values is confidentiality. So here he had these two core values, loyalty and confidentiality, just at loggerheads with each other. As soon as he recognized that, his anger eased. Didn't go away, that didn't resolve it, but it did ease because he understood why he was feeling so angry. We talked more and figured out a way that he could talk with his employee about what she had done without revealing who had initially told him about it. So they had that conversation. She apologized. She understood why he objected to what she had done. And he learned that his information hadn't been entirely true. There'd been a little bit more to the story than he knew. So what happened is that instead of stomping in there in a rage and firing her on the spot, they got it worked out. They fixed it. They resolved the problem, and he kept a very valuable employee. Another example happened a couple of years ago. I was teaching leadership for attorneys in business, and I had them complete this exercise. Well, at the end of the day, as the participants were leaving the room, I saw one man turn at the door and come back to the front of the class. And he said to me, thank you. And especially thank you for that core values exercise. He said, my wife and I have been arguing because I thought I needed to get a job in a fancy New York law firm in order to be successful. But after, and she didn't want to move. But after completing that values exercise, I realized that everything that matters to me is right here. Now that was a profound moment for that man. Another, on a lighter note, one of my core values is adventure. I love adventure. And for that reason, I put a little bit of money aside. I put some time aside to make sure that I can have some adventures. I've gone to Rwanda. I've gone to Guatemala. I've jumped from an airplane, and I've taken race car driving lessons. Those are my big adventures. My smaller adventures and my more frequent adventures often are hikes. Sometimes I hike favorite trails, and other times I go find new trails. And adventuring in that way, adventures large and small, enrich my life. So I encourage you to identify your core values. The next component is self-management. How can you improve your self-management? How can you change your mindset or your behavior so that you feel less of what you don't want and more of what you do want? Well, first, pause. Pause and be present. You might find that mindfulness or meditation will help you to pause and be present. Then think and act in ways that give you happiness and satisfaction. Couple of examples here in terms of thinking and mindset. I was working with a man, or let me back up. I worked a number of years ago with a man who had 5 guiding principles. I've long forgotten 4 of those guiding principles, but one I will never forget, and that is assume positive intent. I shared that with a man that I was working with, a man who had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, seemed to think the world was out to get him a little bit. And I told him that people don't get out of bed in the morning to make you angry. They get out of bed in the morning to do their best, to do what they think is right, just like you and I do. Well, about 6 months after he and I finished our work together, we had a cup of coffee, and he told me that he had made assume positive intent his mantra, and it had changed his relationships with his colleagues, with his clients, and with his family. Now that's a big win, professionally and personally. And another example of acting, the last one was mindset and how you think. This is about how you act. So an example of acting in a way that gives you happiness and satisfaction. My oldest son is a contractor. He's always busy, but he's crazy busy right now with the housing boom that resulting from the pandemic. Still, he managed to take a couple of days off and go fishing 2 or 3 weeks ago. When he returned, I asked him, "How was your fishing trip?" He said, "Oh, Mom, it was great." And he said, "And you know, every time I get out on the river, I think of new ideas and new ways to solve problems for my business." So here he is doing something that is fun for him. And now he has that awareness that when he does it, it frees up his mind. It not only gives him pleasure, but it frees up his mind to think of new ideas for his business. I don't fish myself. That's not the way I that's not the way I get lots of pleasure and feel more happiness and satisfaction. But when I get stuck or when I need a little boost, I love to get out and drive. Love to drive. Not in town running errands, but driving out in the desert or driving up into the mountains. And it gives me that similar experience of just opening me up to new ideas. And finally, as a wonderful coach told me a number of years ago, flip the switch. He would say, you know, if you're having a bad moment, a bad day, or you're feeling stuck for some reason, go ahead and let yourself feel that for a couple of hours if you want to. Then flip the switch. Enough of that. I'm going to get back to work, get back into action. So those are always to manage the way you feel, manage your outlook. Are there any comments or questions right now before we go on to our third component? Maybe, John, you can help me watch.
Sure. We've just put an announcement in the chat window, and everyone should have access to the chat window. And Carol is going to watch that, or Carol and I. So as questions come in, we'll post those.
Okay, that's wonderful. And I can't actually see the chat room, so be sure to let me know. And
we will.
We will have time at the end to take more. Oh, there, now I can see it. We'll have time at the end to take more questions and comments.
We have a first question now.
Okay.
From Charles Jackson. Matt, what's your opinion of SOC 2?
So before we launch into that, Matt, let's only do questions for Jo right now about, because she's in the midst of her talk, and then we'll have questions for both speakers at the end. So thank you for giving us the question about the SOC 2, and we will get to that. But there has been another question that's come in, and it's, Jo, what instrument do you use to assess client functioning?
To assess client function.
Client functioning, yes. I would think they're talking about like the DISC or the Hogan or those type of core values index, things like that.
That's where my mind went to. I use a PrEP personal strengths profile, which I love. It's kind of a hidden secret, but I've been using it for 20 years. And not only do I love it, but my clients love it, and they tell me it feels really accurate. So PrEP personal strengths profile.
Maybe at the conclusion, you can put that in the chat window.
Okay.
Are there other questions right now for Jo? Okay. Would you repeat the name of the test? PrEP personality profile, question mark?
PrEP, P-R-E-P, personal strengths.
Okay, PrEP, P-R-E-P, personal strengths.
Yes.
Okay, I've just posted it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Jo. Move forward. Oh, is there another question?
There's a couple more questions, John.
Go ahead.
Okay. What instrument do you use? Oh, would you repeat the name of the test? PrEP personality profile?
Yeah, we just did that.
Okay.
So we're ready to move forward?
We are.
Okay, thank you. So the third component is social awareness. So how can you be more aware of the people around you and what they are feeling? I certainly be observant, observe personalities and observe people and their personalities and the group dynamics. I was teaching leadership for attorneys in business again just a couple of weeks ago, and asked a couple of very experienced general counsel to attend our virtual welcome event to take questions from our participants. And I asked one of the general counsel, what do you look for when you hire and promote attorneys on your team? And he said, I look for people who can read a room and who can get along with lots of different kinds of people in order to get the work done. That gave me a big smile, because he was talking about emotional intelligence. That is EQ, pure and simple, to read a room, to understand lots of different personalities, and in the business, to build relationships with them, and in the business context, to be able to use that, use those relationships to get the work done. So I have another tool for you, and that is to listen up. All of us can improve our relationships, both professionally and personally, by improving our listening skills. And here's how to do it. So first, stop talking. Yes, in order to listen, you have to stop talking. And then pay attention and make sure that people know you're paying attention. Don't be planning what you're going to say while they're talking. Ask probing questions and then listen to the answers. Asking questions is a powerful leadership tool, but then you do have to listen to the answers. And to periodically acknowledge what you've heard. That doesn't mean you have to agree with what you've heard, but acknowledge what you've heard and act on what you've heard. Again, that doesn't mean you have to do everything you're told, but for instance, someone on your team might ask you to adopt a new policy. And you might say to that person, I'll give it some thought and then come back with you in a couple of days. You come back to that person in a couple of days, say, I've given this some thought, I've done some research, I've talked with another supervisor, and we've decided to take a different course of action. So you did not do what that person asked of you, but you heard the person. And that person, that he or she knows that he was heard because you acknowledged it and you acted on it. Your fourth, the fourth component of emotional intelligence is relationship management. So how can you, or let me back up and say relationship management involves persuading, or allows you to persuade, to negotiate, to inspire, and that's just the start of a long list of things that you can do better if you do a better job of managing your relationships. And relationship management, this fourth component, really draws on the first three. It draws on your self-awareness, your self-management, and your social awareness. So to improve your relationships, your relationship management, a good way to start is to grow your empathy. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Try to understand what it is, what their experiences are. What are their experiences that have given them a different perspective than yours, perhaps? They have come from a different family background. They've had different work experiences. So use that questioning and listening to learn more about people and where they come from. And then embrace diversity of all kinds, not only racial and ethnic and gender diversity, but embrace personality diversity, embrace generational diversity. And when you do, you will get a better work product and you will enrich your own life. And as you build those relationships with your asking and you're listening and you're observing and you're growing your empathy and learning to understand others, as you build those relationships, nurture them continuously. Let people know that you care and that you're interested, not only when they're going through trying times, but when they're going through great times. So it might be, I'm really sorry your mom's not feeling well. Is there something I can do to help? Do you need me to cover for you at work? or congratulations on that promotion you got, or how's your new book coming. Just continuously stay in touch and let people know that you are thinking about them, that you care about them. Improving emotional intelligence can be a fun and rewarding lifelong pursuit. I suggest that you pick 2 ways to improve your emotional intelligence. Focus on those 2 practices for 6 months or so. Don't make it hard, make it fun and interesting. And then assess your progress and either continue improving in those same areas or pick new ways to improve your emotional intelligence for more professional success and personal happiness. And now I'd like to open it up for conversation. I'd like to hear your comments, take your questions, and especially I'd love it if some of you would share ways that you think you might, things you might do to improve your emotional intelligence. I hope you'll all do that core values exercise, but what might you do to change your outlook, to build better relationships, to feel more of what you want to feel and less of what you don't? So I open the floor.
With our small group, how about if we just raise hands? Because you can be in gallery view. I suggest you change your view to the gallery view because there's just 15 of us on the call. And who's got a question? Raise your hand and unmute yourself. And let's start with some questions for Joe, and then we can have questions for both speakers, and we can begin a general discussion. These are 2 important topics.
And don't forget, I really want to hear what you're going to do, something fun and exciting you're going to do to feel more of what you want to feel and less of what you don't.
And for those of you who don't know where the hand is, you go down to your toolbar and click on reactions, and that's where you will find your hand icon.
Yes.
Or you can just do this.
Yes, or you can just, there's just a small group of us. Well, I have a question.
I have my hand up.
Oh, you did. Go right ahead, Harvey. Excuse me.
Okay, well, I'll just share this. It's real brief. Well, I have a placard on my wall that I remind myself right behind me, and clients can see this on Zoom calls. I got to turn around and read it, but what it says is that people don't care how much you know. What they care about is how much you care. And if you can't, for me, that's a really good benchmark to keep in mind. And consequently, I know I'm not the brightest guy on the block, but I think a lot of my success has been because people understand that my focus is on their benefit, not my own. Putting my own self-interest aside for their benefit.
Thank you, Harvey.
Go ahead, Patricia.
Yes, one of the things I loved about your ideas for us on how to improve in our social and emotional intelligence is make it fun. And I've been looking at quite a lot lately a recent bestseller. I think it's still on the bestseller list, and it is the book about habits by James, I'm blanking on it, sorry, Atomic Habits, that's it. And yeah, one of the ways that he insists that you're going to replace a bad habit with a better habit is partly to make it fun. And so I think you've really hit on a key component of how to embrace this. So thanks for that.
Oh, thank you, Patricia. You know, one way you can have fun and build more awareness and build new relationships, you might, well, like I love to go out and drive. My son loves to go out and fish. You might decide you're going to go hike once a month, or you're going to go to a new art gallery once a month, and you're going to learn about a new artist once a month. You know, there are all kinds of ways, and I'd love to hear some of your ideas.
Well, I threw a barbecue Saturday night, and it was kind of spontaneous. You know, I sent my first batch of emails out Wednesday asking people if they'd like to come over Saturday. And my wife promptly said, John, you need to plan these things. I said, I did. I sent it Wednesday. Then I sent some more on Thursday. Then I started calling friends. So we had about a dozen people. And naturally, Kate says, John, this is a lot of work you're asking me to do. I said, listen, I'm throwing the party. I'll work the grill. So it was a lot of work. It's true. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. You know, I've missed the interaction. I'm sure everybody has. God, it's been horrendous just sitting in an office.
Yeah.
Here comes Brandon Hamilton.
I'd like to add one more thing that I heard you say, Joe, that I think we can all focus on and maybe take it to the next level. So the idea of caring is very important, and it is a foundation of what you're asking us to do. And I'm very familiar with the literature on caring, but something I've noticed during pandemic times is the word love, the actual word love, is coming into the media more. And it's almost like, you know, it's actually okay to use this word, even among professional colleagues or people maybe that you don't know as deeply as perhaps you once would have thought necessary to use that word around. And I really think we should be aware of this and maybe embracing it in this moment before we totally go back to the offices and, you know, post-COVID life that we are anticipating. It's a moment in time that we can really use to help us bridge ourselves to a better way of functioning, I think, with respect to emotional intelligence. So I'm telling everyone, don't be shy about using this word. It's a good word to be using right now. And you can really use it to help people understand how you're feeling. And, you know, you often are going to get very deep feelings from them in response because you've opened a door by using that word.
Yeah, very nice.
Who else? Good. Chuck? Yes, Chuck.
I think your question was, what are we going to do differently? And one of the things that I've noticed about myself is with having so many online meetings, I've gotten sloppy on that technique that you mentioned, how to read a room. And I think that as soon as it's feasible, I'm going to dramatically increase the number of face-to-face meetings I have with people. This Friday, I'm a president of the board of an organization. We're having a face-to-face in-person meeting this Friday. And I know that it's going to be very different for people because they're not going to be able to blot out their video if they want to go do something else during the middle of the meeting. If they have to go to the restroom, they'll have to say, excuse me, I've got to go to the restroom. But I think that it's going to be extremely important, and it's something I put on my to-do list for the next 6 months, is to dramatically re-engage with people
Yes.
In the same space.
Yeah.
So.
I like it.
Yes, Jerry.
You're on mute.
after all this practice. That's the damnedest thing. Anyway, I just came back from Vegas where I did a live speaking engagement.
Wow.
And one of the, yes, it's amazing. It's the first time in a year. But one of the things I was amazed by was the reticence of people to engage in normal networking kinds of conversations. We need to make sure that as leaders in the community, we have to help them get that started. If you don't, it's not going to happen. People tend to withdraw, and this COVID thing has caused them to withdraw even further than they normally would. So it's up to us to start those conversations, and using some of the techniques that Joe was talking about, draw people out, get them involved, help them find their way back to what I'll call a normal in the new normal. Okay?
Yeah.
And Jerry, when you say they were hesitant to network in the way we're accustomed to, do you mean that even though they were at a live event, they were hesitant to approach each other, to get that close to each other?
They were, when they came into the room, they, instead of chatting with the people around them, they were tending to go into and sit down and not talk to anyone, which is not an unusual thing. I mean, I've seen that before, but it was much more pronounced. And somebody had to kind of break the ice with them. And the old icebreaker idea, that's what needs to happen, big time. I was totally amazed. Now, again, the promoter I was working with is an ace at jacking things up and getting the room involved. But even he and I, we were on a phone call this morning. We both said the same thing. People just aren't there yet. They aren't back yet.
Yeah.
Jerry, I just want to jump in and reinforce what you're saying. Some of you know that recently I had bypass surgery.
Yep.
And the recovery from that was a pretty rugged experience. The cardiac rehab program I've been to is great. There were 8 people in my cohort. Some had had triple, quadruple bypass. Some also had had strokes. I mean, and everybody had faced death in some way. The one thing the cardiac rehab nurses mentioned is that those groups where people jumped in and talked with each other and shared more generally had faster recoveries than those that didn't. I was fortunate to be in a group where even people across the spectrum of social and political views, we came together under the empathy of a shared experience. And Jerry, I started out by going around the room the first week, introducing myself to everybody, even though at that point I could barely stand. So it was really early on, but I felt it was vital that we all get to know each other and share our emotional and technical experiences with each other. Tomorrow's graduation day. I'm really looking forward to it. I already have my report card on how I'm doing in terms of my cardiac behavior. I'm back to work full time. But the point is, what you said, Jerry, resonated with me because it is a complete bullseye of what my most intense experience, one of the most intense experiences of my life has been. You validated it, how important it is to take the leadership and get people talking with each other. That's it.
Thanks, Chuck. I fully agree with you. And I'll fling it back to Joe because she's got more expertise in this area than I do. But I absolutely believe that as we go into the new normal, this is one of the things that as consultants, we are going to have to do. And we're going to have to help our clients understand it and do it as well.
Agreed.
Who else has, Rudy, do you have a question? Oh.